Hello, everybody. Hello, Bettina. How are you doing?
Hi, Eric. Hi, everyone. I'm doing great, actually. I'm doing really great.
That's good. Good. I know that you have your productions upcoming next week, and you got a whole bunch of stuff culminating for your play.
Four shows. This is a big one.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we'll be in rehearsals on Sunday and dress rehearsal on Wednesday and four shows Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So, it's going to be fun, but it's going to be the end too. So, it's kind of sad. Fun, but sad. And, that because we had a really nice little group of people that are from choir, but you really get to know people on a deeper level when you're working with them for so many hours and spending a lot of time in the green room. Although this last production we didn't. We sat in the audience, which was kind of cool because we
Hmm.
got to see the show and we hadn't seen it. So it meant a lot more, and I think it really affected our performance for the better because we felt more connected to the show
Hmm.
than sitting in the green room and waiting for our cue and stuff. So it was good. It was good, and I think we're doing the same thing for the Burlington show. So anybody in Burlington or Hamilton or Oakville that didn't catch the Oakville show that wants to go, it's called The Tale of a Town at the Burlington Performing. I'll give my plug.
Yeah. Go
The
ahead.
Burlington Performing Center for Performing Arts. It's the only one in Burlington. You'll find it.
Mhm.
Um, it's a really great show. So, and I'm in it.
And what days are they?
Thursday night, Thursday the. Let me look at my calendar here. Thursday the 7th, no, Thursday the 8th, Friday the 9th, Saturday the 10th. And there's a matinee and an evening show on the 10th, the Saturday. Um, so yeah.
It's good. If you watch the show for any amount of time, you can always tell when Bettina has shows upcoming on the weekend or something. There's an extra energy about you, and perhaps
Yeah,
me in the summertime when I have baseball games or something.
it's the hidden diva coming out, I guess.
You can't wait to get out there.
Ta-da! Yeah, and I never would have thought I would have been, out there on stage with my my construction belt. What do you call it? Tool belt on, and hard hat performing. So there you go.
Uh,
Just a little
well, we
teaser
are.
there.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So we go from this jubilant attitude. We're late to broadcast today because we had a
Yes.
long talk before the show about what we wanted to talk about today, and we want to attempt to talk a little bit about religion. We don't do it too often in the show. I mean, sometimes we have a passer and we make comments about it and where we're at with regards to it, and fundamentalism and the process you go through. Not only if you are religious, you get brought up in a church, or if you join a church later in life, which is something I had an experience with, um, or any sort of dogma, any sort of like subculture dogma that you get exposed to, and you know, when you get into it, especially if it's of your own choice, I think to an even more extent than if you were just born into it, then it answers so many questions for you, and it gets you excited, and it draws you in for however it connects to you. And then because it's providing you with so much value, especially off the start, um, we can fall prey to it becoming we can fall prey to being a fundamentalist in whatever dogma it is that we're associated with. And, it's actually something that we might want to talk about on a future show. But, I've often said in my personal life to some people who have been close to me that, I'm 37 years old now. I mean, by all objective measures, I've lived a charmed life, being born healthy in this part of the world at this time, with this amount of opportunity and economic prosperity, for sure. Um, But I can absolutely see, and this isn't by any means to condone the behavior um, or anything like that. But I know myself, the type of person, type of man that I am and was growing up, 15 years old, 20 years old. I can totally understand how I would have been like a terrorist in the countries and in the places where that is something that is um, cultivated. And because I was so fundamentalist in my views, I was so righteous in my ideas, because I believed I was such an idealist, and injustice was like intolerable. We all go through things in our childhood, and we're all very self-focused. We're not really paying attention to what other people are going through and so on. So, our story is loudest in those teenage years, I think. And I think it's a measure of maturity to move beyond that. But in that time, I can really see how I could have easily been engaged in those activities, believing the way I did and the way that I thought about life. And all I needed was an injustice to fight against, and an ideal and righteous set of beliefs to participate in. And it doesn't really matter what the beliefs were, just if I believe that they were righteous, then I would have fought for them. And I think it's it's a very dangerous time, and it really does seem like the demographic of people who carry out these heinous acts of violence, all the way from the heinous acts of violence, all the way down to the socially aggressive people. Um, there is an emotional immaturity about it, but they seem to be perpetrated, generally speaking, by younger males. And I think it's something that we should talk about, and not just label us as being virtuous, Western, enlightened people, and them being the opposite. Because I think if we took a real honest look at it and had a real honest conversation about it, we could be better equipped to see the tools that draw people in, and to see the folly in fundamentalism wherever it occurs, not just in religion, but in other areas, and even spirituality, or even subculture, cultural subculture. The way that we all, not the way that we all, but the way that we see subcultures have such a strong hold on a large swaths of certain ethnic groups, or groups of people that kind of have some similarities, and they seem to coalesce around these subcultures. And my argument is that it's bad for society, and it's bad for peace, and it's bad for the pursuit of enlightenment.
Yeah, those are all some really, really good points. And I have to agree with you there. I think there's also another sort of aspect to it, and that is that all of us, whether we are fundamentalists or not, but I think we all have a bit of that in us, but we are all doing the same thing as we go through our lives. We are searching. We are searching for a way to relieve the suffering and pain that we are feeling in ourselves. And we tend to look for that out in the world and blame it on certain things that the world is about, and that self-righteous, and that sort of looking for justice, which, by the way, is in terms of the Enneagram, the 8, 9, and 1 are very much the idea behind the 8, 9, and 1 is that whole idea of justice. In the 8, which you and I as 5s would go to at certain points in time, it's very much about, justice for the vulnerable. And there's an anger behind it too, sometimes, with the 8, 9, and 1. And so that 8 will use that anger to fight for that justice. And I think we all have a little bit of that in us. But the idea that it's a lot of young males that get pulled into a lot of these terrorist groups, I think has to do with the fact that they feel a bit lost. They're in some pain, emotional pain, and they really don't know how to alleviate that pain. And so they go searching. And that combination of the fundamentalism, the need for justice, the buried anger, the self-righteousness is like a perfect storm, if you will, that sets them up to be drawn into these groups. But I think it's happening on different levels with everybody at different times and places. And I think the same thing can be said for religion or spirituality, if you really want to get down to it, is we're searching. We're searching for peace, for happiness, for joy, for love. And we land in a certain place at a certain time where we go, yes, this is the answer for me. And sometimes we get stuck there. And sometimes we end up in the more fundamentalist group. Sometimes we end up in a more spiritual group. But when we find that little place where we feel we're going to finally let go of the suffering and find peace and joy and happiness and love, we tend to get very euphoric about it. And we tend to go out then and think that the whole world needs to know what I have found, because look how wonderful it is, right? I mean, when you try a new product, this is a lot more probably for women than for men, but when you find a new product that is fantastic, you tell all your girlfriends about, you've got to try this product. It's no different than that. With guys, it's probably got to do with sports or beer. Oh, you've got to try this new beer. It's absolutely amazing, right? Or, why don't you like the Leafs? They're such a fantastic team. Or, it's whatever we feel is like, wow, the bomb, is what we want to bring our friends into that fold. And I think that's very much the same thing that's happening, is that we find something new. It is fantastic. I can see how it's changing my life. I can see how much happier I am. I've got to tell everybody I know, because they need to have this too. And we become a bit preachy, and we start, talking to people in terms, and I say this from experience. So before anybody says anything, I've been there. I have done this. I have hit that point of recognition of what I've done and felt the shame and guilt and embarrassment of having done it. I think it's a very common thing, and I think many, many people go through it in many, many different ways. And but I think the point we have to get to at somewhere along the line is to recognize that we can only say what's good for us. I cannot judge what you need. I can't see you unhappy and say, well, you know what you need to do. You need to let go of that, or you need to do this, or you need to see it differently, or it's not up to me. I go back to the old Byron Katie, where she says there's 3 kinds of business: my business, your business, and God's business. And the only one I need to be concerned about is my business. And I think that's a really important thing to remember. And as far as different groups, whether religious or terrorist or whatever they are, there's something for everybody. There's a group for everybody to join in community. Sometimes kind of weird community from our perspective, but it is still community. It's like joining forces for a cause or for an end result. And sometimes we move through it and find a better way, and sometimes we think this is the better way. And I've really learned, and I'm still learning, who am I to say you need to do it differently? Because who am I to say that my way is the way? I don't know that. I know a lot of people who follow religion that are just as loving and kind and happy and joyful as I am, maybe more so. So it's really it's a tough subject, I think. A really tough subject.
Yeah, I think a couple of things you said that were key were, we all want to relieve the pain and suffering that we feel, and we're all born into some pain and some suffering, to varying degrees, but it is a part of life. And I think, especially when you're uneducated or when you're not developed, and I just mean like developmentally, like from an age perspective, you look outside of yourself, like you said, to find a relief to that pain and that suffering. And you are the center of the universe for a very long time while you start your life. Um, and it feels really good because I know that religions, among other things, it could be music, it could be whatever, they can speak to you and they can validate that pain and that suffering that you're feeling. And I think that's something that these groups or any subculture does really, really well. Is first it validates that the common human condition is pain and suffering, as well as love and connection. But we seem to be able to, Tony Robbins says that you do more to avoid pain than you do to gain pleasure, and it can move us, it can motivate us when our pain and our suffering is validated. And it's kind of a low level, but it feels very good. Uh, we can think and we can move beyond it and realize that it's just commiserating. But when it has gone unvalidated or invalidated in life, in family, in whatever, and you have a group, whether it be religious or some text or spirituality or music that says, I see your plight, that's very alluring when you're struggling. And that can really draw you in and be, oh my goodness, I found my people. These people know me. And then what is dangerous from there is that from there, because we feel a kinship, we give our power to the supposed leaders of whoever is creating this narrative that we feel so attached to now, because for the first time in a meaningful way, we feel validated, that our pain and suffering is recognized. And that's step one. And then step two is that here's what to do about it. Go get rich, or, give your life over to Jesus, or live congruent with our beliefs. And yeah, we may look a little outside, but the person who's indoctrinated, just even by that first step, is like, that's okay. I don't mind being weird because at least I have an us. At least our group. At least I feel comfortable here. At least I have the sense of belonging, and it nails another human need. Is that need of connection, that need of belonging. And we are willing to blind ourselves. I think about myself in religion to very, intolerant and even racist views within certain church organizations. And, that's okay. That's okay. Because you know what? Now we have it. We've made mistakes in the past, but we don't realize how by giving away our power and by giving away what is righteous or what is the best way to live, we're willing to not see some of the ways in which we're really living a narrow slice of life and of spirituality and of love and of peace and of inclusion. And I think the more that we can break down the structures of how these structures of control work, the more aware we can be of them, and therefore the better defense we have to get what they offer. Because like you said, there is a group for everyone. They organize, they split off. I mean, how many hundreds? I just know Christianity better because I grew up in it and I changed denominations. There's so many denominations. They all split off to get every person that they can. That fits for somebody. There's a group for someone. And I think the more that we can talk about these things and out them, the more that we can take what it is that they're offering without taking what it is that they're offering. That we can understand what it is that they offer to people, and we can create that in a way that's not so dogmatic and not so intolerant to the people who eventually become the them.
Yeah. And I think ultimately what people are offering when they do that, it's not so much what they're offering, but what they're looking for, even in having found what they think it is that they need. What they're looking for is to be validated all the time. Like even once you find your tribe, once you find your group and you go, yes, these are my people. These people think like me. These people understand me. These people will gather me into the fold. Even then, now we're doing something different than our friends and everybody else we know outside of that new group of people. Now we have to be validated by our friends in order to be okay with having gone in this new direction. And so now we want to convince everybody else how wonderful it is so that we'll feel better about being in this group. So I
Yeah.
think even in the offering, there is a searching, there is a need, there's a desire to be validated, accepted for, the new ideas and who you really are. So so complicated and yet very simple when you look at it, right? It's
Yeah.
just our constant searching to be validated and be okay.
Yeah. To be okay. That's right. And we want
Mm-hmm.
to be okay forever. Not even the rest of this life, for the next lives or for the next step in whatever, if you think we go to some sort of astral plane or some heaven or hell or whatever, we want to be okay because we know how temporary everything is. We really know that at a deep level. We might not have the words or the concepts because I didn't for a long time. I always thought if I could just do this, then I would be okay the rest of the way. And how much of a fallacy that is. Um, yeah, and that searching, I really like that you said that we're constantly searching to be okay. And when we get into a group where it's like, oh my God, this is the answer. And
Mm-hmm.
then we get all preachy and then the recruitment begins.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, the thing is, we do that every single day of our lives
Hmm.
in our relationships. I mean, if we really, and I actually, this is something that I've been dealing with recently, is just recognizing how often I do things to, in order to not ruffle any feathers. So
Hmm.
that constant walking on eggshells because, ooh, if I do this, so and so might get mad. Okay, I better not do it. And how I recognized that my whole life has been about pleasing, making sure other people were okay, um, so that they wouldn't be mad at me. But I gave up my life doing for that. Like I
Hmm.
didn't live my life. I lived everybody else's life, which is, very much a nine thing. Um, speaking in Enneagram terms again. But I think the five has a tendency to do that because they want to belong, and so just recognizing it's like I don't have to keep doing that if I don't want to, and you know you laugh,
It's such a good sentence.
but think about it. How many times in our lives throughout our day are we doing things we don't want to do because it's just easier than listening to someone complain? In the end, it's not easier because in the end, you get to the end of your life and say, what did I do that I wanted to do? And
Mm.
although that sounds selfish, I think we are much happier beings when we do what we want to do and we skip the guilt. I always call it Catholic guilt because I was raised Catholic, but you can call it what you want. There's Jewish guilt and there's Catholic guilt and there's, you know, whatever kind of guilt. But um, I think guilt plays a huge role in that. And um, I've just now been starting to go, you know what? If they get angry, they get angry. There's nothing wrong with that. It's not about me. But I don't want to do that. I am not going to do it. And wow, is it ever freeing? But you first have to recognize, that it's happening because we've done it for so long that we don't even notice that it's something that's amiss. We notice that we're not as happy as we could be. We notice that, we're always going out there to feel comfortable. And we may feel comfortable, but are we really engaging in life? Or are we just keeping the status quo?
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's another whole thing too. And again, it all comes down to that searching for validation, searching to be, am I okay? Am I okay? Did I do a good thing? Am I, which sounds very 5-year-old, but there's a 5-year-old living in all of us. And Sometimes that 5-year-old comes out big time. Other times it's in the background, and I think we are as adults always protecting that 5-year-old when we do those
Mm-hmm.
kinds of things.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really interesting that that's kind of a part of it too, and that searching to be okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And oftentimes, I mean, until you realize it, that wounded 5-year-old is calling the shots when we're 32, when we're 51. It's still calling the shots. You know, it's a mind blowing when you uncover it and you go, oh my God, that's why I've been doing that for 40 years. That's the reason. You know, if you that comes out to you while you're reading a book, or that comes out to you at therapy, or that comes out to you in counseling, or in a great conversation with somebody, and it hits you, you're like, oh my God, where's my autonomy? You know, and it's amazing
Mm-hmm.
the structures would, I mean, in a way, it's ingenious. How do you get 7 billion people to, you know, we do have a lot of flaws as human beings. And there is a, you know, how do we get everybody to contribute to a system when so much of what they do is not what they want to do? It is quite ingenious, really, how the whole thing's set up to where you start as a child and your parents will very quickly tell you that you're not okay, or that, you know, your behavior is not acceptable, or what you want to do is not what the right thing to do is right now. And we take those lessons, and then when you know, we go through this indoctrination at school with the learning test, learning test, learning test with a grade, you know, and you get separated and you just learn how to follow instructions, and nobody wants to color in the boreal forest in the geography class, or learn about the second prime minister or the 14th president. Nobody cares. As a 9-year-old, you don't care, but you just constantly told to just learn it and then spit it back out in the test. And you do that until you're 20. You know, now you need to go to basically university, master's degree. You're 26 years old. You've been doing that your entire life. You're just got out from your parents. Now you're in all this debt, and society then takes over and says, okay, well, you need to do these things to get out of debt and to get the material things that you want in life. It never gives you any options otherwise. You know, it doesn't say, hey, if you want to, you can go live in El Salvador for, you know, $14 a day. Nobody gives you that option. You know, nobody even presents it to you as something that you could do. You know, it's all about now go get a job and go, you know, get the things that you want to get through the commercials. And we just follow, and we follow and follow. And so much of our lives end up being spent doing things that we don't actually want to do, but we do them to keep up with the debt, or to get the things that we think that we want, that we think will bring us happiness, because we've been indoctrinated into that belief system. It's really quite amazing when you can see it for what it is, and then decide your own course through that in a way where you're, you know, because you can find your, you know, and that's the thing, whole thing about fundamentalism too. Sometimes when you see the systems for what they are, then you get really selfish, and you're like, screw it, I'm just gonna live for me, and I'm gonna take every advantage I can get, and I'm gonna like just be hedon. And you can do that for a little bit. And it's an important step in the process, and you get a little bit of you get a little fundamentalist in that. But then you again start getting the feelings of, you know, this isn't all there is, you know. And so it's up to us to see things for what they are, to have conversations, to break down systems of control, to break down the way we get tricked into doing so many things we don't want to do, and then finding our way through that from a space of peace and love, and holding out your hand to try to help people who are ready to take your hand. All you do is you hold your hands out like this, and if somebody comes in and takes your hand, awesome. And if they don't, then they're not ready for your brand of whatever it is that you know that they might not know, or that you know differently, but they might know in a different way. And it's just all about relaxing and trying to help everybody up at that point. And, you know, so what I think a little bit about this show is, from both of us who have been through that period of, oh my God, uh, everything's a lie. We need to, this is the new way forward. And everybody, you got to listen, because what I just found out will blow your minds. And then you just realize your friends just start getting further and further and further away from you. And you're like, okay, well, this isn't working either. So what the heck?
Why is no one talking to me? Interesting fact, though. When A Course in Miracles was first penned, and they got all the editing done, and the book was all done and everything. The first thing they did was, great, now we got to send this to all the people in the government so they get it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there you go. So even to A Course in Miracles had
Yeah.
that same kind of um, evolvement where there's like, yes, we must send a copy to everyone in government and all the governing municipalities and the big companies and corporate America and blah 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 blah, and they totally missed the point.
Yeah.
Totally missed the
I know.
point.
It's
But I mean, that is truly, they say there's different stages of grief, and there are different stages of evolvement, and that is definitely one of the stages, because I've seen it so many times over and over and over again. Excuse me.
yeah.
So
Yeah. 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 It's always, and the great reminder, because it happens in every single if you want to call, I keep saying subculture, but that's what it really feels like. It happens in every single one, and then we want to recruit everybody in, and then we just need to realize that it's, this. I love the expression that world peace is an individual solution. It's never one that's going to be mandated. It's an
yeah,
individual solution, and like everything in life, every way that we can contribute and help everybody and redefine the systems by sending the answer to government, they're not going to, it would be impossible for them to mandate the change as the way things are right now. And it's really not even in their interests, or it's not in the interest of the people who bankroll them. So it's always an individual solution. And that's really the way forward if we really want to change this world. And honestly, we can change our own world very quickly. We can change our own. We talk about this all the time about how we can change our own environment, change our own experience of life individually. And that might be good enough. And to leave enough crumbs along the way that it really becomes uh, a grassroots level movement. Each people, everybody, choosing their own individual solutions in a peaceful and loving way.
yeah. I think that you teach by example, and living it is a form of teaching. And so I think that's all that any of us can ever do, is to, instead of trying to force it down someone's throat, is to just be that expression of love in the world, and show other people how it can be by being that. Um, Even when they want to take us down for it, or even when they think we're crazy or whatever judgments they have about it, is to be. And that means if you're following spirituality, or you're following Judaism or Hinduism or Muslim or Catholicism or Presbyterianism, it doesn't matter. Um, I think to be the example of loving presence in the world is really the best form of teaching that you could ever express.
Mm,
So
yeah, and beware of dogma everywhere, everywhere. Uh, but Bettina, we've gone past our half hour. How would you feel about finishing us off with a meditation?
Oh, always. I always love doing a meditation. Let,
Terrific.
let's close our eyes and breathe deeply into our belly, breathing that beautiful air into every cell of our being, breathing deeply, breathing fully, being totally engaged with our bodies, our mind, and our spirit, with what we're feeling physically and emotionally. Really deep breathing into that place where you can connect, where all the barriers are dropped, and you can see clearly what is happening within yourself in this moment, knowing when you are living fully in your life, making decisions based on what you want and not on keeping the peace, or um, trying to uplift someone else by your actions, by pleasing other people, by giving up yourself to find peace yourself. Really look into yourself and recognize those places in you that may not be engaged fully in the life you want to live. And although it may seem selfish, it is not. It creates a happier you, making choices because it's something that you want to do as opposed to something that you feel obliged to do, can remove resentment, and you can give of yourself more freely and more lovingly from this space. So just take note of the how and the why of your actions and your words. And try and connect to that loving presence, that soul, that divine essence of who you are as you make those choices out of love and respect for yourself, which will be translated to love and respect for others. And when you're ready, wiggle your fingers and your toes and bring yourself back to the world.
Thanks, Bettina.
You're welcome.
I like the way that you acknowledge, the potential bristle of the selfishness of doing what it is that you want to do, but realizing that loving and having respect for yourself will ultimately lead to you having love and respect for others.
Yeah.
Well, thank you everybody for watching, and look forward to actually next week we'll be off because Bettina has her full weekend of productions. But we'll see you in 2 weeks. Take
Jazz
care.
hands. Have a great week, everyone. Or a great couple of weeks.
Mhm.